A government report out Thursday shows America's birth rate is the lowest it's been in 30 years. The downward trend will leave a smaller share of young workers paying into Social Security and Medicare.
A new report from the CDC finds the U.S. birth rate has dropped to a 30-year low.
The number of babies born in the U.S. fell to a 30-year low last year. According to a provisional report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were about 3.85 million births in the U.S. in 2017. That's down 2% from 2016 and the lowest number recorded since 1978.
American women are having so few babies that the U.S. fertility rate has fallen to its lowest number in 40 years. The replacement fertility rate of 2.1%, that's enough to renew the population, is typically viewed as an optimal level for stability. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, the total fertility rate for 2017 fell to 1.76 births per woman.
More than 3.8 million babies were born in the U.S. last year. That's the lowest number since 1987.
The next generation of Americans is getting smaller, not in size, but in number. According to new data from the CDC, the U.S. birth rate hit a 30-year low last year, down 2% from 2016. And despite there being more women of childbearing age, birth rates declined for women ages 15 to 39. One group that's having more children, 40 to 44-year-olds, whose birth rates have been rising since 1982.
A mysterious disappearance comes to a tragic conclusion. Police have now identified a body found in the Chattahoochee River as that of Timothy Cunningham, the CDC employee who went missing back in February.
Now, officials made the announcement today after fishermen discovered the body on Tuesday night.
Well, the medical examiner has ruled the cause of death as drowning, though the manner has yet to be determined, whether it be possibly a suicide or an accident. Even Atlanta police tonight still have questions as to how and why Timothy Cunningham drowned in the Chattahoochee River. In the northwest Atlanta neighborhood where Tim Cunningham's home sits empty, missing posters to find him can still be seen hanging. Neighbors say their hearts are heavy with the tragic news. The body found by fishermen in the Chattahoochee River late Tuesday night, not far from his home, was finally identified Thursday through dental records as the missing CDC worker whose disappearance gained national attention.
I just don't know how he got in the river without intentionally getting there.
We may never be able to tell you how he got into the river.
And Atlanta police say they still have questions too, though the medical examiner believes Dr. Cunningham drowned around the February 12th date he was reported missing.
But since the investigation is still open, we do not have a manner of death as whether it's an accident or suicide.
We kind of know where we last found him, somewhere on videotape. So, I mean, we've talked to a lot of people. We've looked at a lot of different factors.
Police do say Cunningham was wearing his favorite jogging shoes when his body was recovered, so it is possible he was out jogging. Detectives believe, although it is unusual he left his home without keys or ID, maybe he thought he didn't need them.
Do you think this is closure for the neighborhood or not?
It's hard to say. You know, I mean, I'm having a hard time, and I feel really bad for his parent.
Next door neighbor Viviana Torres' family was interviewed about the strange encounter days before Cunningham went missing, when she says Cunningham asked her husband to delete his number from her cell phone, though she hopes one day the family will get more answers.
I mean, I don't know that they ever will.
A new study out this week is raising concerns about the safety of a certain version of the flu vaccine and a possible link to miscarriage.
Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
the deadly flu and the new and alarming numbers coming in from the CDC tonight. Among the worst flu season in a decade, and it hasn't peaked yet. 39 states now reporting high flu activity. 7 more children lost last week alone. 37 children dying so far this season. But tonight, another age group making news because of how hard this is hitting this year, baby boomers. And what about the caretakers? If you're caring for someone with the flu, should you get Tamiflu as well?
Tonight, 37-year-old mother Carly Ilg Slavin from Indiana, one of the flu epidemic's latest victims. Her father says she'd been taking care of her husband and children who had the virus when she started feeling sick.
My wife called and said, "Get over here right away." They put her in ICU. She's in critical condition.
He says she died just 3 days after testing positive for the flu. Across the country, nearly 12,000 flu patients so sick they've had to be hospitalized. The CDC says the number of children reported to have died from the flu this season has climbed to 37. 12-year-old Dylan Winnick's family says he had a fever on Monday and died on Tuesday.
Shocking. You get a call that he's passed. How the hell does that happen?
David, something unique this year. The CDC says hospitalization rates for people between the ages of 50 and 64 are higher than for the very young. It's usually the other way around. The hardest hit group of people, still those 65 and older.
It is called the Centers for Disease Control for a reason. It's the one place that deals with the worst stuff on the planet, the most virulent, fatal, and feared substances, bacteria, and viruses on planet Earth. They must be kept somewhere, ideally contained and under lock and key, but right now there are big problems at the CDC over just that, the control and handling of dangerous substances. A recent incident involving anthrax made news, then today we learned about more.
Smallpox was one of the most frightening diseases the world has known. It killed at least 300 million people in the last century before it was eradicated. So it came as quite a surprise when the U.S. government revealed yesterday that vials of smallpox had been forgotten for decades and were just discovered in a cardboard box. The big question now is whether the virus is alive, and Dr. John LaPook learned more today from the scientist heading the investigation.
The vials of smallpox are currently being tested in a level 4 high containment laboratory at the CDC in Atlanta. That is the agency's most secure facility. You can only gain entry through a special eye scan. Steve Monroe runs the Division of High Consequence Pathogens.
Is it possible the smallpox can still grow?
It's possible, but we don't know for sure if the smallpox virus in these samples will still be able to grow in the laboratory.
What's your guess?
I will not be surprised if one or more of these samples contains live growing smallpox virus.
What was the security involved in moving the samples from Bethesda, Maryland to the CDC?
The security involved the cooperation of the FBI as well as local law enforcement, and so there was ground transport to the appropriate air assets that were provided by FBI.
Monroe says the trickiest part was making sure nothing happened to the fragile glass vials that had likely been stored for 50 to 60 years.
How could this have happened?
I think this is one of those flukes. It's sort of the trunk that's in the attic that nobody's looked at for many, many years.
Are you asking lab directors to go through their inventories, look under the tables, look in the closets?
Certainly one of the lessons learned from this episode is that laboratories around the world should have a firm idea of what they have in their collections, and that people should make an effort to do a complete inventory.
The material in the vials was freeze-dried, and the end of each glass tube sealed shut with a flame. In all 6 vials of smallpox, the seal was intact.
John, why does Steve Monroe think some of the virus may still be alive?
Well, there are instances of the past where vaccine against smallpox, and that contains live virus, was freeze-dried, it was sealed shut just in a similar fashion, and then it was stored for 20 years or longer. It was reconstituted, and it was still infectious. So the question is, how long was the current sample stored at 5 degrees centigrade, and was it ever at room temperature, and will it at the end of the day be able to be infectious? We still have to see.
The source of the virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. And so there are things that would literally make things 1,000 times worse. In fact, let's look at a model of a virus spread through the air like the Spanish flu back in 1918. So here's what would happen. It would spread throughout the world very, very quickly. And you can see there's over 30 million people die from that epidemic.